Welcome to the Wise Dome podcast, a series that is so much more than just a podcast series. This is a movement towards a lifestyle you know you deserve. It's all about the ease of inspiring and sharing your knowledge and experiences online. I'm your host, Nikki, and I have always admired those who share their wisdom, those who have decided to inspire others. Just like my guests, I found my version of inspiring others by sharing my wisdom and created a lifestyle I wanted, and I'm going to share all the secrets for how you can too. On this show, you'll find inspiration, motivation, and advice from experts, as well as valuable tips on how to get started or improve your business. Let's dive into how you can begin and grow your wisdom business. Remember, inspiring others looks different for everyone. How will you inspire? Welcome to the Wise Dome podcast. And today we're chatting with Dr. Serena Goldstein. And she needs no introduction because she will explain to you who she is and what she does. Welcome to our podcast, Serena.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and very much too enjoyed getting to know you and your ventures even before this.
Yeah, a quick little chat beforehand. Well, yeah. Let's share with our audience then, how did you get started with your program, or you're just venturing online and sharing your knowledge with the world?
When I was little, we're talking 7, 8 years old, I remember thinking to myself, I want to be rich and famous. And what I understand now is those words actually meant more of, I just want to reach people and talk to people. Yeah. Deep down, I actually also really like to hibernate. And while many may not guess, I really am an introvert. I would go more towards the introvert side. My mom has a memory of me when I was about 7 years old. So I grew up in New York City, Manhattan, in one of the buildings. And people used to come up to her and say, oh, I just had the most wonderful conversation with your daughter. And I didn't think I was 7 years old at the time.
Just having conversations with everyone.
Yeah, awesome. No big deal. Probably just some life story or something. And so there was always this, and even if we go back a few years before, which, even as I talk to people about too, was especially as a child when we're uninhibited, when for the most part, we're pretty much just doing our own thing. We're going about whatever qualities we need that feed our soul. And I'm thinking about wow, we're here in this vast, big world. So fast forward a number of years later. So now, through high school, that was when I had fallen in love with psychology. That was after a gymnastics injury. But again, we also now have circumstances in our life that, help shift and change. Then, even though I believed my path was to become a PhD because I had a therapist change my life and I wanted to give back exactly what she gave to me. And so on the other side, there's no doctors, really no healers in our family. If you ever thought you were kind of different or off on your own, well, yeah, you probably are. But don't worry, you'll eventually find your tribe too. Yeah. Because, or whatever manifestation you bring into your reality, whether or not you've had the words for it then, is the college that I went to. So even though I had, another college in mind, I went to Arizona State University. I was recruited to be in the honors college there. So I was all right, cool. I get to go back to nice big public school. And I really liked the structure, and some of the classes that I would be taking in the college itself. Yeah. And it was through eventually going pre-med, same thing. That was kind of a twist of fate after I realized I did not want to take Japanese anymore. And then that was another, but our teacher took us to this naturopathic school because, a friend is oh, well, go pre-med, you could learn more, it's just here, you're on your own. I was all right, well, I've always been after knowledge. So at age 19, I walk into this naturopathic school and I see healing through health. Doctor is teacher, using your body to heal. Wait, what? There's look at how much I get to learn. You know, it's like when you just know somewhere deep down, like you're always after knowledge. And I think that was always part of me. So from psychology to even conventional medicine, I was like, oh, just drugs and surgery? Like,
there's got to be another way. Yeah.
There's got to be more. I mean, like my mom, cooked all these meals. Like my dad just, like we're a pretty athletic family. Like there's more to help.
Yeah.
So then as I walked into the school, the first words out of my mouth were, oh my God, I need to get flown around the world speaking about how there's no magic pill. I guess I'll have a practice, then I'll write, and again, what I didn't realize at the time was I was already formulating a business plan. But, I still had, a lot more college to finish. And then it was almost 5 years of naturopathic school. So the first 2 years is all conventional medicine. So we do learn, all conventional, including the pharmaceuticals. Then the next 2 years, we do clinical nutrition, or we take these courses, botanical medicine, chiropractic, IV therapy, minor surgery, homeopathy, and hydrotherapy. So it's more tools in our toolbox to not just treat the patient, but to get to the root cause of disease, while also, of course, knowing all the herb, drug, nutrient interactions. What I loved about this profession was I was going to have the freedom to not only choose, like which treatment to really individualize per patient, I was going to also now incorporate my knowledge and my love of just really sitting and spending time with the person from the psychology. However, what do doctors usually do? They find an office, they get a job, maybe they become an advisor, but maybe that's later on in their career. In a way, there's still a checklist. And it has taken around 15 years for me to actually admit to myself, I'm a speaker first, because that's the proof of I love talking to people. Once I put that energy out there, I love connecting people, but my joy is when I inspire others. For me, in my journey in getting my message out there was very much, that I'd say that'd probably be the next question. Getting to this place of where I love having my practice as more boutique. I get to really dive deep with people to now where I've even incorporated a significant amount of practices and philosophies that incorporate spirituality and even seeing signs and synchronicities within the body, not just the universe. So they can continue their motivation and long-term health and really keep taking things up a notch. But to be in this place, really feeling, I guess I'm getting some confirmation. But to your question of being in the online space and getting my message out there, I'd say it wasn't so much what was holding me back before, but it was, I thought I had to check all the boxes, get the degree, get the office, make sure you partner with an MD, see thousands of patients before you can even share your wisdom. Yes, I always grew the writing and the speaking piece. When I was in New York, lots of networking. Because that's also what fed my soul. But again, it was tearing down those stereotypes of you have to hit maybe this much money in practice, see this many patients, all of that before maybe you're credible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so it's almost like, I feel like as I say that, perhaps every profession, who's ever listening has, okay, fine, you got the degree, you know how smart you are, you know what you have to offer, or whether it's academia or maybe it's a whole lot of life experience that came all at once and you realize you are impacting. But then there's the stereotypes that come afterward.
It's like a generic path that everyone thinks they have to take when you've gained all this knowledge, all this wisdom. And there is just thinking outside the square is so important. I think just for all of us to have, we're all individual. And obviously with your journey, yes, you knew that there was a path that, generically that is to follow and so forth, like you said, for that credibility in a sense. But credibility, what does that really mean in the end? Credibility is Is it success? Is it how much
Well,
you're earning, how many people you inspire?
yeah.
Isn't it? You've just got to ask yourself that question.
And who determines the number? So I love that you brought this up, because honestly, whether you do feel motivated to get all the degrees in the world, which, hey, if you do and that's what feeds your soul, have at it.
Yeah.
But if there's something about where maybe that's just not for you and you find yourself going down a different path, then yeah, maybe that's what was written in your stars. But to what you said, so when I first came out, I was like, cool, I'm primary care. I can heal anyone. But of course, marketing, messaging, so forth down the line says, oh, hell no, go choose a specialty, especially if I really want to get known. So all right. So I specialized in a lot of hormones and then branched to weight, because that was a very significant part of my own health journey. Then as I shifted into more long-term care, I think it was what you had said about the stereotypes coming into that career. I remember as I would network, someone would say, oh, well, I'm an expert in this. And I would start to get intimidated because, wait, but I went to medical school. Where's my certification in being an expert? Mm. And then someone would say, oh, yeah, I'm seeing this amazing new weight and loss and hormone expert. Again, what makes them an expert? And the more I kept questioning that, all of a sudden one day it hit me and I said, no, but seriously, what makes people there is no certification, no boxes checked. What I have learned in my practice is that, and why I, just like to have a little meet and greet with people before, there will be people who jive with me, and then there will be people who jive with more of my colleagues.
Right.
But again, what's an expert? And I'll never forget the day that it hit. It was like, why am I even trying to compete and call myself that?
And that's
was like shattering.
Yeah, well, and that's a huge message that I'm constantly sharing, wanting to share with people, is don't compare yourself to others. If you feel you are an expert in what you do, then yes, you are an expert in what you do. And it's how you do it too that individualizes you to compare to other people. So don't compare. Don't compare to other people.
Yeah. And what you said, if you feel it, then by all means. But it's true. I wasn't feeling it, and it's not because I didn't know my stuff, but there was something about my promise to people is that I show up. I never want to promise that I'm going to know exactly when, where, and how your body's going to react.
So when did this all start? What year did you start doing this, like get into the whole speaking area?
Actually, as you ask me that, is even I reflect back. In 5th grade, I landed, it was Ursula, so you could say kind of the supporting role in Bye Bye Birdie when we had a drama program. And that was actually my first year in that program. So I got a number of classmates who were not thrilled with me that I did not put in the time for the other years. When I was 12, I was actually in middle school. I was volunteering at the American Cancer Society, and I actually spoke in City Hall about why the city should ban smoking in restaurants, which then got put into place a few years later. I realized I've actually always been speaking. And when there's a passion, like I'll just get on stage. Like it just wouldn't occur to me to not do that.
Yeah.
So fast forward, coming into the medicine side of things, I pretty much started right when I started my practice. So I've been in practice now for about a little over 7 years. I will say, even when I was in naturopathic school, I was always telling people about naturopathic medicine. I remember some classmates dreading, oh my God, we have to be at a table to get like this, to fulfill this credit. I'm like, I don't see the issue. We just get to educate people about things that are going to change their life. Yeah. So for me, it was just like, what's the issue?
This is easy. You've got a passion. When you love what you do, it's so much easier.
And that, I mean, when I was in college, I was part of the American Medical Student Association, but I kind of represented the naturopathic / integrative side. So actually, I was the one in charge. I put on both student and doctor panels for integrative medicine for, other ASU students, again in med school, from the gym to just meeting people in the community. I was always handing out my student business card. And so then when I went to practice, I plopped myself right in the middle of Manhattan, because deep down I knew my practice also had to encompass meeting people, writing. So I think writing was really what I began building first. Speaking, I would put on workshops or I joined a women's networking group and I'd say, hey, when can you schedule me in for a talk? I would say New York led for, I think I did some lunch and learns here and there.
Awesome.
It was really, but you're right. It's when there's a passion for it. And because I knew there's the same patients on the one-to-one, then the speaking allows me to share what I've learned, that whole, then they kind of tell me, wait, okay, can you break this down for me? Because I do have the tendency to give off a lot more information than I realize, because self-development and my own evolution is so important. All of this is actually feeding my soul. Well, yes, I'm putting it out there to the world for who I am. This is exactly what I need, so I can keep refining.
Keep going. Yeah. It just keeps invigorating you to keep going. Yeah. You're self-inspiring.
Yeah. That's a good word too.
When you started, going down the path of, obviously you have your one-to-one, which is, the clinical side of things, the practice side of things. And then you've got your one-to-many, which is doing guest speaking situations, or just, like you said, the lunch and learns, which I love. I love that whole idea of lunch and learns. Going through that process, carrying that across to online, did you discover that you had to do it in a different way? Was there sort of any roadblocks that you might have come across, technology roadblocks, or just even ways on how to transfer that information across to someone online? Because obviously face-to-face with people, it can be different to online. Yeah. Did you discover anything or learn anything along the way there?
Oh, you mean where I feel like someone just took a hammer to my glass ego? So yes, with the lunch and learns, I had some of my PowerPoint, but I will say at that time too, because I was working predominantly with weight and hormones. That's how everyone knew me. Yeah. I will say currently I still kind of do, but I love working with the weight, hormones, but now sleep, mood, those really general stuff that you can't really get the diagnosis for. But people are like, wait, but there's a deeper reason. I was like, come on, let's talk. Yeah, there's probably something karmic.
Yeah.
But when I was working with weight and hormones, in a way it was easy, because I could show a picture of the endocrine system, talk a little bit about the body, then, here are the best labs to order, and then some of my favorite therapies. It's almost like the presentation was kind of built in. So a lot of my shift was realizing that, as I've talked about, okay, well, what we do is a self-expression of who we are. All of a sudden, even I was getting where I couldn't grow.
It's more just the factual things. It's not really becoming personable, is it?
So now moving into especially now this online space, which I'd love to be in touch with everyone, because there will be future content coming out, is because at this point in my life, in my career, both through my own experiences, what I've seen with patients, my own deep dive into spirituality, which I, in many ways, kind of put my practice on hold for about, I would say, it was right around late 2019, 2020, kind of that time frame, to be like, I need to figure out who I am. Is this really me? And that's where I say it's really taken about a decade and a half to get convinced to step into this place. Because now that I'm creating this, okay, well, how do we really stay motivated on the day-to-day and to the long term? And I'm incorporating psychology and all the physiology, including how the body really can be a metaphor for our life, as I've picked out different mechanisms. And then, what that means for us, moving forward, that trying to convey all that, and then hoping to keep people's attention while they've probably had other screen calls, and this is not the only thing they're doing on the computer, and my own tendency to overgive. Oh, yeah. So what I found and what I believe the online space is very much helping us, or what we can do, it's not just the sharing knowledge, but there are ways we can package it. We can say, okay, what are these bite-sized pieces? Moving more online, because I actually did start my practice virtually. So it was very nice to have that all set up with everything, right? But it's forced me to choose what I say, which I want to say it can be hard because it's really been because at least when you're in person, you don't really have a time limit. And again, my talks are already kind of structured, but this is like, no, when you want to talk, when you want to present, when you want to start packaging your material, have different tiers and start thinking in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then it's not just, oh, don't say this, don't say that, but then you need to understand your stuff enough. So this is actually thinking about going online, being in that process of doing so. Yeah. It's really been forcing me to not only know my stuff, but know it well enough that I'm going to know how much to give and when, and how to continue nurture relationships.
Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? When you're passing on knowledge across to people, there is, we're not all born teachers. We are, a lot of us, we all converse with other people in our daily lives. But when it comes to actually trying to share or deliver a message or, just information across from one person to another, everyone has different ways of learning, don't they? So it's how, like you just said, there's a way, how do I keep them interacting with me? How do I keep them interested in what I'm saying? And, and like you said, it's so good for you to say, especially for our listeners, because when you're planning out content in general, you do have to think about, well, what are they needing? Am I going to overload them with too much information? So I've got to be a bit more concise with what I'm going to deliver to them. When you obviously, you're so well known for, just being a wonderful speaker and just sharing what you have with this vibrancy that you have, and your personality just shines through. How do you feel with your audience? Do you see moments where those aha moments, because I'm sure you have seen that many a time, do you alter each time you do a chat or a talk or anything?
That's a great question. To some extent, yes. I will say, and for any of you listening, because I know, again, words or, reading is, online articles, like that's one way, videos, and that, like, there's all these. And I remember I had a coach tell me, make sure you schedule weekly Facebook Lives, because if there's anyone out there too, who, when you want to commit to or if you want to commit, you commit.
Yeah.
And there was something about when she said that I was like, no, because what if a patient wants to book then? Or what if I really need to meet? Like, I don't want to say I'm not there yet, but what I've come to understand is, when you're creating from the heart and you're in that zone, and because that's been a lot of this, maybe in some ways offline evolution, until you kind of create that story to relate once you're out of a lot of the stuff of it.
Yeah.
Is that now I understand why I couldn't. If there's ever any hesitancy about video, and I'm kind of saying this too, sort of as an asterisk, is that don't take it so hard. It may just be there's still more truth that needs to be worked out. Because what I'm finding too is, for me then to also consistently show up, and yes, I do all my posts, I do some reels on Instagram, all of that. But I know my next step will now be sharing tips, tricks, and like all the tidbits.
Yeah.
But when I do start that, I want to commit to that. So circling back to your question, oh yeah, I'm making a lot of mental notes. What I will also forgive myself, but have that is, I won't put pressure on myself to say the same exact thing every time. But most importantly, there's that reading of the audience if you do have that audience or whatever energy is there. But I feel like if the overall energy is still being conveyed, that's what people will see through on video. So from there, as you're raising that vibration, as you're, okay, what can I say? Yeah, forget about how you're going to start. That will also, to get to that place where then when you're speaking it, because words are spells and they're really freaking powerful. And so, allow the process of, I think online and content creation, it's age of Aquarius, but it's different, but it can also be from the place you can certainly allow it to not just grow your business, which I know is really, grow your business, just do all these things and step by step. But it's like, no, but it's like, let it be part of you. And so then when your message comes out, people will they'll catch it.
Yeah. And you got to allow evolution to take its pace, have its own pace. And that's why I laughed before when you mentioned Facebook Lives. It's like I think 99.9% of us who have to, that content share online have this sort of moment of, I've got to go on social media and do a live. And some of us panic, some of us don't, whatever. And there is that moment of just take that first step. But just like you said, be kind to yourself. It's okay if you're not ready to yet. There are so many other ways. And I guess it's just making sure that you came up with a really good point just before, being true to yourself and not trying to be someone you're not necessarily. And, if you can do that, you can connect with people a lot easier through written or whatever form of content delivery that you're choosing. And you will evolve over time. Let it just take its pace. Sometimes it's not going to happen overnight. And I can tell you now, I've been in, networking with people for many years now, and I do a podcast. I'm not doing anything on video or anything because I'm just not ready for it yet. And I only just started doing some reels for social media. Yeah. And it's only because it only has to be 30 seconds. It's fine. But otherwise, you're not going to get me on camera for an hour. Forget it. It's not going to happen. So, yeah, everyone has their own pace. And I guess as long as we can connect with people on whatever level, and get our message across, that's the most important thing. But is there any major lesson that you might have learnt along the way, specifically from your audience, from any feedback that you've had, and that might have changed the way you did anything?
I think one of my biggest lessons, I think there have been some major turning points. So, yes, we've all had our shifts and changes and even up levels, expansions, all that in business. What's interesting is, and I've looked back at some of my earlier articles, so part of my journey is that I only found out that we had a soul about 2.5 years ago. I was not raised with religion or spirituality, maybe sort of like a higher power, but also think of where I grew up, Upper East Side, New York City, where I was born. Oh yeah, you were checking boxes literally from day one. So fast forward, so I will say that was quite earth-shattering, finding out over 3 decades later of wait, then how was I living my life before? And in looking back at some of the past articles I've written, because I've also written for some of, professional publications, and I've spoken at, our conferences and everything, is that there were hints of me talking about, but nothing happens overnight. There's no magic pill. Self, it's maybe a little self-love here and there. So my learning from being out there was, it's not black and white. There were snippets of who I was, or even in your questions all along. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. Actually, my speaking and my comfort started very early, and somehow subliminal, subconsciously continued.
Just directed you in this.
Started. And I guess this is where, even in my work with patients, is to take a look back at your life and what were those cues that you were really natural at? Because what I found was even though they were coming in as little speed bumps along the way, well, at one point when I was running cleanses, soon people started saying, well, what do I do after the cleanse? And then I was like, oh, I totally know what to do. I couldn't really tell you how, why, or where that confidence came from. It's from, my own stuff from way back. But at that time, it was like, oh, they were helping give me confidence to start making this shift.
Yeah.
And then, then it sort of became a little bit of that back and forth until a few years ago. And it was like, oh, I do want to bring spirituality into medicine. Talk about this definition. Because let's say if I'm hearing odd symptoms or even just something that won't really go away, well, maybe it's literally something passed down in our lineage. It's just saying not genetic.
Yeah,
or what if it's more energetic or chakras or something astrological, all these different. But same thing, that next shift happened because all of a sudden my patients were like, well, and these are, I'm still in New York, so they're pretty well researched. Yeah, they've probably seen a bunch of, whether natural, functional, they've done some of their due diligence. They have their supplements, yet still there are these general concerns or, medications or a new diagnosis. And they're just like, I can't figure out why, but what are my next steps?
Right. Yeah.
So I would say those are my biggest, most confidence boosting, because holy crap, I know I'm forging my own path, but at the same time, it's not, because there are others who came before me in knowing that there was more to the body than just a physical being. But it was being able to listen, just like what you said, whether it's to your audience, to your patients, clients, even if it's them saying kudos. Yeah. I had someone say too recently on social media, oh yeah, I talked to my clients about this. That we can all validate each other in some respects, especially when it's something that's so meaningful for human life and our evolution and the betterment of society and our species. So that's my biggest lesson, is to notice your surroundings and grow with it, and then help build on that confidence. And then that's the growth. That's also where too I was able to say, yeah, I'm a speaker, I'm an educator. Yeah. The doctor is totally part of who I am. But there's all these other facets. So to anyone listening, follow those little oh wait, what did that person just say? And just that's
puzzle it together, because and that's the thing, isn't it? You're puzzling those pieces together. You don't realize they're pieces to a grand puzzle that you're creating for yourself. And if you can tap into recognizing those little messages or feedback or, I think that's a really important part, to just stop and listen. Just all the little bits and pieces that we put out there.
And as you said, and just to really hone in on it, because it's true, we're always told this, but I feel like with your question, what you were getting at was, here's the reason. When we find the patterns in our life, that's why I did share, some of those when I was a child, and where you even caught some of that reflection was, this was already part of me. So then leaning into it, it's already there. Yeah. Then what you find is steadily, people will trickle in who will go, oh, good, I'm so happy you said that.
There are, and I really believe, I think a lot of us don't give ourselves the recognition that we should, like we were mentioning before. It's just recognizing that you have an ability to share some knowledge with someone, and just, I think the word is embracing it. Just embrace that opportunity that you have, and take your own pace, obviously, that, you need to take to do it. But what advice would you give anyone that is looking to start a wisdom business online?
One of my favorite questions to not only ask myself or my patients, but that I pose actually to what I find is that overall is, what would you say to yourself without judgment? In other words, what would you ask yourself, say to yourself, if you asked your heart, what message do I want to give to people?
I like that one.
Just start there, because that's the fire, that's the vitality of, again, whether, from my own experience, it was, as I said, oh yeah, I want to be rich and famous. I knew there was something
within that
else. Right. Yeah. Then it was my path that shifted me into medicine. And, again, it's where, total anomaly for my family, so to speak. So that's where that question comes in because it's that fire that is going to take you through those roller coasters, that vitality, because that is what's going to guide you through. Yes. When you are going through even, what newsletter service do I use? There are so many out there. How do I set up my website? Quick, funny story. So here I am, quite educated. I was also scoring very high on my math scores versus my reading from when I was in third grade. So that I was like 99 percentile in math, like 85 in English. Still, of course, over the years bumped up the writing, but I was always a math person. I did learn some coding for my website. I will say that was more just my own curiosity. But this funny story before that was, I can't tell you, because I literally don't remember, but it must have been at least 2+ weeks that I was on the phone between sites like GoDaddy, Weebly, like maybe some of the basics, to try to understand what the difference was between a host, a domain, and actually creating it. And it wasn't until literally one rep said to me, okay, imagine here's the foundation, here's where you put in the furniture, and this is your address. And I was like, so while you're asking yourself, what is that message that I know I just need to be out there? However it will, shift or, especially when it comes to more marketing or copy over time. But this is where there's so many fabulous, entrepreneurs who can help with this. Because I've hired many people over the years. Take your learning in stride. You will laugh. Even if you wind up spending like a week trying to go through newsletter services. But you know what? When you find one that you feel like you jive with, then that's going to be motivating for you too. Yeah. So it's allow it as all of that. That's my best advice, is to have fun with this. Let it be from that soul creation.
That's fantastic advice. I really appreciate that. I know our listeners will appreciate that. Be kind to yourself, please, because I know, like,
and again, and I think I say this, more because, like, I know when you're smart, you have your degrees, or whether the degrees are not, but you just know you're really smart, and you feel like this is humbling for you. Trust me, it's not just you. It's not just me. It's many others.
A lot of us. Yeah.
Zone of genius and find. And connect with others.
Zone of genius.
Make it super simple.
But that's one of the major things that I've learned, by networking and in some of the programs that I've taken part in, is just recognize your zone of genius, and what you can't do, don't try and do, because you will be so critical on yourself that, just delegate, because, you've really got to concentrate on what you are good at and what your message is, because sometimes I think we can get really stressed. Just be kind to yourself, because you'll get there. But don't be afraid to ask questions either. I think that's a huge thing that we should, let everyone, just a constant message, put your hand up and ask. Yeah. There is always someone that will help you out. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Definitely. And I'm also going to put a little asterisk to that, because as I'm listening, I was like, because I do talk a lot about intuition, even in practice. is that the cool part is, even if you find yourself stumbling along, just know that even as you're learning some of it, when you then, this, it's always a whole like, okay, we need to know a little bit about what we're up to before we hire out, so to speak.
Yeah.
But then that means whoever you're in contact with, you say, hey, and I realize because my patients have done this with me too. Hey, like I've done a little bit of research. Here's what I can do. So I can understand some, but can you explain this to me? Just, where like I can get what I need, but like that, this is what I'm going to need.
Yeah.
And really listen to the person's response, because if their response is, and fortunately I've had a lot of these where they're like, oh yeah, I could tell you need this, but you know what? I think we need to bring in this other app or this other connection, because here's what I see for you as your next step. And if you start to feel, oh yeah, like I think that sounds familiar, or that, and you start to feel that vibration expand, then they're likely the person for you. If they start talking to you, like, why did you even bother? I mean, and then they start going off and then say, oh, this is going to be over your head. Forget it. They're out there gaslighting you.
Right. Okay.
So
that's good advice.
That part of allow yourself to know, even if it's a little bit of coding, this some of like, even let's say hex codes for colors can be a very simple process, where maybe say, hey, I understand even a little bit of this. Yeah. And then you can say, hey, I could sort of speak this language, that watching how they talk to you, watching your own vibration. Yeah. Because I think it's, that having people aligned and feeling good who you're going to work with, because who knows, maybe you may also want them for a future endeavor too. So it kind of takes some of the, the stuff out of it.
Every connection we have has possibilities of expansion somewhere along the way. And I know you mentioning this now, and, I don't mention this very often on the podcast or anything, but, like we say, we don't know where our journeys are going to take us. And, with my background is in interiors and in product development and so forth. And now I've ventured into developing an actual platform, like a tool, and going through that process, I had to learn the lingo, let's say, trying to transfer my vision of what I needed to create as a tool to someone else who's more of a technical mind, such as a developer, and having that conversation with them. And I realized I ended up choosing the developer I chose because we had a connection that was more on a spiritual level rather than the technical level. Like they understood the goal. They understood the message. They understood the ethic behind what we're building. And that is what had me choose them. And I do not regret a moment of choosing them, because through this whole process, they've always had the same vision as me. Probably not exactly the same, but you know what I mean.
No, but it's
that connection. And so I love that point that you made there, because that intuition that you have, it's like they may point out a couple of things here and there or whatever, but you do have to have that connection, don't you, with them?
Yeah. And also to know too, for anyone listening, you'll also get a sense of when you need to hire out, because there is a piece of, you will likely educate yourself enough, it's the internet, but at some point, watch your own body reactions to how stress, anxiety, or stuff manifests in your body, whether you find yourself glued to a screen, you're ignoring your family, just all these where you just feel like, oh my God, I have to do, whether it's that visual of a closing in or literal stuff, GI then starts to not feel so good, but all these different signs and synchronicities could also be the body saying, you've learned what you need, go get some help. So that's another, it's okay to learn, but know when to bring someone on board. But and that's when the vibration comes in, and in the fact that they're going to be like, oh yeah, no, kudos for learning what you did. Let's just like take it up a notch.
Yeah. You got lots of good advice today. A lot of good advice.
I'm glad.
Pointed here and there. Well, a side question I love to ask my guests is, what legacy are you looking to leave? Whether it be personal, business, is there a particular legacy you wish to leave?
It's all of it. Because my business is who I am. It will always be a reflection of my own personal development in all aspects of life. The legacy that I hope to lead, that I've begun to envision, is to bring spirituality into medicine, but from a place where, I know it was a while to get like, hey, the mind body, but from the spiritual side is where we can talk about dreams and visions and say, hey, well, actually, what if our symptoms aren't purely physical? Is it ringing in your ears, or is it something a little deeper? Is it depression or a spiritual awakening? What if we actually had shamans and chakra healers and sound bath, like all these incredible professions for our soul that were actually on insurance? Or what would it be like to really put food as medicine first? And that legacy, and again, what I'd be good at is I've started thinking, because I actually do know a lot of big names that I've met along my years, but now it's up to me to also build, to there too. And then what if we were to all come together, whether we then push legislation, we hold conferences, and I know there are some out there, but to shift into letting natural medicine and shamanism and healing, to have that be mainstream. Because again, it's not that pharmaceuticals are bad. I mean, they're life-saving. They can definitely be great for like, maybe we need this right now.
Yeah.
But we also have millions of pathways, and there's no magic pill. We're multidimensional beings. So what if we brought all of this into medicine, and to where patients can say, well, here's the treatment that I'm thinking of. And then the practitioner's like, okay, cool. We have all of these to choose from. And that's part of what drew me to this medicine too. Yep. So when I think of my legacy, it's the impact, the intuition that we all have, because we are all psychic, in many, in different ways. It's just a matter of, can we start to trust our body, trust others, the world around us? And that's where I even say, hey, because you know what, even honing in on that intuition, that's where you can even start listening to your body. And that, that little voice too, that may even says, maybe you should start hiring out now. I see a very different world. But as we know, the change starts with us and what we can do.
Beautiful. Well, you've been absolutely amazing to chat to today, Serena. You are a beautiful soul. You really are. And I wish you all the best, and especially like collaborating with all those names, that you have in your pocket that hopefully you can make a change in the future and somehow. But I do see, I wish you all the best, obviously, with, continually growing this wisdom business that you have, online, face to face, just everything that you do and the message that you're sharing to people, that there's alternatives. They all come as one. They're not all separate pieces. They all come as one, and to recognize that. And I think you're doing a fantastic job there. And thank you so much for your time today. And more than anything, I'd love to ask, is there an offer you'd like to share with our audience today?
Yes, I do have a complimentary free gift. So it's at my website, so drserenagoldstein.com/spirituality and medicine. And this is about decoding your body's symptoms on a deeper level. So this is where, hey, like say something really general, even like sleep or weight or anxiety. Well, what are the different ways it can come from? So these are some of my favorite questions, just like how I said earlier, what would you say to yourself without judgment? These are some even deeper questions, plus some exercises that you can do to really start to say, hey, how do I want to feel even better within my body? How can I start to get to know these many millions of paths? I'll send you that link. And then in that, is also all my information, where we can even be in touch and talk about working together too.
No problem. Well, all those details, the link and everything will be in our podcast summary below. So you'll have all of that information. And again, thank you so much for your time, Serena. You've been amazing to chat to. And everyone out there, just remember this chat was with Dr. Serena Goldstein, and she's a naturopathic doctor passionate about guiding people to trust their intuition through our story and in understanding how their body is a metaphor for their life. I love that. Absolutely love that. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. We'll see you on our next episode. And Serena, you've been fabulous. Take care.
You as well.
Thanks for listening to the Wise Dome podcast. If you enjoyed and have been inspired by this episode and you'd like to support the podcast, do subscribe and please share it with others. Post about us on social media or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, Nikki Kelly, you can follow me on Instagram at Wise Dome Podcast, WISEDOME podcast. I'm Nikki Kelly. Thanks again, and we'll catch up next time.